A major update on the backstage altercation between CM Punk and Jack Perry as more details emerge and more sides of the story are brought to light, with some claiming that the other party initiated the physical altercation. Details on that, plus AEW All In generates a record gate for All Elite Wrestling, becoming the highest paid attended event in pro wrestling history. Tony Khan has opened up on Mercedes Moné possibly coming into All Elite Wrestling. Khan has also announced a brand new pay-per-view coming in October called WrestleDream. Details on that, plus Full Gear is coming later on this year. We've got details as to when and where that's going to be taking place. Orange Cassidy, the next two opponents for the International Championship, have been announced also by Tony Khan. An update on AEW All Out next year, considering we know that All In's going to be returning at Wembley Stadium. Will All Out once again be 7 days later? Kenny Omega versus Konosuke Takeshita is now official for All Out this coming weekend. And what's the latest on the backstage real-life issues between Santana, Ortiz, and Eddie Kingston? Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of All Elite Wrestling, and one of the biggest coming out of All In last night was the behind-the-scenes drama once again, this time between CM Punk and Jack Perry. Now, if you're not familiar with all of this, we'll go through all of the sort of different details we have. There's kind of quite a few conflicting accounts. There's several reports now coming out from Fightful Select, PW Insider, Pro Wrestling Torch, as well as from Dave Meltzer too. So let's get straight into it. So, according to Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select, CM Punk and Jack Perry had an altercation backstage at AEW All In. Now, initially when it first happened and when the story was first breaking, details were quite few and far between, but Fightful learned that Jack Perry and CM Punk had an altercation shortly before CM Punk went to the ring for his match at AEW All In. Of course, that was the opening match of the actual pay-per-view against Samoa Joe. Jack Perry was on right before him on the 0 hour pre-show where he lost the FTW championship against Hook, and during his match he did a spot on a car window and said directly to camera, quote, "It's real glass, cry me a river." Now, this was a shot at CM Punk, who had a confrontation at an AEW Collision taping this summer over Perry's insistence on using real glass for a spot on the show. Now, Fightful were told that Perry wasn't happy with how the situation was relayed publicly by those close to CM Punk. Now, Fightful say that they have learned the following regarding Punk's side of things, which claims that Jack Perry approached CM Punk backstage and, quote, stepped in his face and, quote, bumped Punk. Punk was then said to have pushed Perry. Perry allegedly, quote, came at Punk and got choked, end quote. Now, Fightful hadn't at the time heard of a particular kind of choke or who broke things up, and they did and were strong to insist this is just one side of the story and more details would continue to emerge, which indeed is what has happened. Now, Miro had his say on the situation as mayor. Miro was actually at Wembley Stadium. He was actually on the 0 hour pre-show as well. He had a contract signing segment with Powerhouse Hobbs ahead of their match at All Out this coming weekend. This is what Miro said. We covered this last night. He, quote, tweeted a Wrestle Purist Twitter post, basically relaying what Fightful had said in a sort of aggregate report of it, and said, quote, that's fake and untrue. So Miro was denying that indeed that's what happened, or even if the incident took place at all. Miro claimed the Punk side of the story was, quote, fake and untrue, and other versions allege that Punk threw a punch and that Punk stepped to Perry first. Once again, some are saying that Punk threw the first punch and that Punk stepped to Perry first. Other accounts claim that Punk initiated things. They exchanged words, Punk got in Perry's face and then pie-faced him. Punk allegedly grabbed Perry in a front face lock and it was broken up. Once again, that's coming from Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select. Now, PW Insider, they reported during the show that Jack Perry was sent away from the venue and CM Punk was still at Wembley at the time of their reporting. Eventually, according to Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select, Punk was asked also to leave. The Wrestling Observer are claiming that Punk was removed by security. We'll get to that in just a second. Now, Fightful do say that they've reached out to both CM Punk and Jack Perry for their sides of the story. There was a bit of a misconception about the initial report going back a few weeks ago about the incident that happened at Collision regarding the use of glass and all that kind of stuff. There was a line in it saying that Punk was accusing Perry of trying not to come to work the next week, but Fightful are reporting that Perry had a pre-planned and approved vacation, hence why he wasn't going to be coming to work the next week anyway. So that's kind of what Fightful Select is saying. PW Insider also confirming this altercation did take place. Tony Khan himself has confirmed the altercation took place as well. He said that an investigation was ongoing during the media scrum after All In last night. Now, according to PW Insider, specifically Mike Johnson, one version of the story that he's been told is that there had been a previous conversation between the two about Perry doing a glass spot. Obviously, as I mentioned, when the match last night between Perry and Hook was ongoing, Perry said what he said to the camera. According to Mike Johnson of PW Insider, backstage, the two came across each other. The prevailing story later making the rounds was that Perry confronted Punk, leading to the two shoving each other. PW Insider, Mike Johnson is reporting that they know for sure they absolutely had words backstage and that they had a physical interaction. Perry, again, this is when it gets quite murky with all of this. From there, the first story was Punk struck Perry. However, the version that is becoming the most shared is that Perry was caught in a choke. Now, they say they're working to clarify, but the belief is Perry got the worst of the altercation. As I mentioned, initially, Perry was asked to leave, and then eventually it looks like CM Punk was also asked to leave. So Mike Johnson from PW Insider sort of also explaining both sides of the story there in terms of what people are saying. Now, it's also being reported as well by PW Torch, what they're kind of hearing as well. They say backstage Punk confronted Perry as Punk headed to the entrance area for his match. PW Torch's sourcing indicates that Punk got in Perry's face and asked if they had a problem. As words were exchanged, Punk pie-faced Perry and then restrained him in a face lock and threw some punches at him before he was pulled off. Again, that's the PW Torch's side of it, saying that Punk initiated it, asked if they had a problem, pie-faced Perry, tried to throw some punches, and then eventually he was pulled off. As I mentioned, the PW Insider Elite report said Punk went after Perry and, quote, even hit Perry, but said versions of the story still vary at this point. It must be said the stories don't completely kind of differentiate themselves greatly in terms of what happened other than who actually escalated the matters first. That's the big kind of question here. But as more eyewitness accounts emerge, there might be some clarity on the nuances of who initiated this altercation. Now, PW Torch is also reporting that they had heard the incident actually nearly caused a delay in the start of the opening match, as the production crew were scrambling to find a way to fill time if Punk wasn't able to go out on time. PW Torch also is reporting that they have learned both wrestlers indeed did eventually leave the building. Perry was asked to leave first because his match was over first. Punk left after his match, but if he was going to be part of a post-match angle with his Real World title bout, there was a possibility that he could have returned. He didn't because, of course, that didn't really need to be happened. As I mentioned, the newest episode of the Wrestling Observer Radio 2 has also given more insight into what happened to Punk after he defeated Joe and went backstage. This is what was said, quote, he, referring to CM Punk, goes to the backstage area and immediately there is security there and security escorts CM Punk back to his dressing room, said Brian Alvarez. Jack Perry was then told to leave and he was removed from the building. CM Punk stayed in his dressing room with security for I'm not sure how long, but eventually security came and removed him from the building. Now, as I mentioned, during the post-show media scrum, AEW CEO Tony Khan acknowledged that the altercation took place and stated that it was an ongoing investigation. However, Khan said he would not comment further on the matter. So I know that's quite a lot of different information there, but that's kind of the latest on this, is that we're now into the territory of lots of different eyewitness accounts saying a lot of different things. Certainly, one thing's for sure, there was an altercation, it got physical. The big question is who indeed initiated it. Let me know your thoughts about all of it in the comment section below. Now, speaking of All In last night, I mean, you forget that AEW had their biggest show ever. AEW has announced the gate for All In London. All Elite Wrestling had their biggest event to date with AEW All In London from Wembley Stadium. The company made history with an announced paid attendance of 81,035 fans for the event. AEW billed the show as the biggest event in wrestling history, and they have broken major records for wrestling and also for the company. The promotion announced AEW All In London featured the largest crowd in history to ever attend a pro wrestling event in Europe. The show was also AEW's highest grossing event ever and one of the largest pro wrestling gates of all time, generating more than $10 million. The press release reads as follows, quote, All Elite Wrestling announced tonight that AEW All In London shattered multiple records across the professional wrestling industry. The sold-out event, which was broadcast worldwide, saw 81,035 fans from more than 70 countries converge on Wembley Stadium in London, marking the largest crowd in history to ever attend a pro wrestling event in Europe. In addition, AEW All In London became AEW's highest-grossing event ever and one of the largest pro wrestling gates of all time, generating more than $10 million. Tony Khan then went into the comments about it, but that is certainly the big headlines coming out of AEW All In, is that they had this paid attendance of over 81,000. Tony Khan did say during the media scrum last night, if you factored in people that didn't pay, sort of comps and employees, staff, all that kind of stuff, most likely there was around sort of 90,000 people in the building, but the paid attendance figure was over 81,000 for a gate of over $10 million. Now, one person that people were talking about a lot coming out of last night was Mercedes Moné. She was shown in the crowd at several points during AEW All In, and in a post-AEW All In media scrum appearance by the new AEW Women's World Champion Saraya, the topic of Mercedes Moné came up. Moné was shown and named on camera with a full initial nameplate, and there's now an update regarding a potential future between Mercedes Moné and AEW directly from the president himself, Tony Khan. Tony Khan said of Moné's appearance at the pay-per-view event as a spectator, quote, She's not cleared, Mercedes Moné. I think it was great to have her here. She last competed for New Japan Pro Wrestling, so I thought it would be excellent to have one of the top international stars in all of pro wrestling here. And the last time we saw Mercedes Moné compete, she was actually competing against our own Willow Nightingale. There's a lot of exciting international pro wrestling, and I thought it would be great to have her here to see all the matches, including the AEW Women's World Championship. But she's not cleared since her injury. I just thought it'd be good to have her taking the show. Definitely a lot of potential things could happen there, and I know New Japan Pro Wrestling's had great experiences working with her, and I thought it would be great, given that she's not cleared, but wanted to take in the biggest paid pro wrestling crowd of all time and see what AEW is all about. I thought it would be good for her to be here. But obviously, she's not cleared or not wrestling or doing anything anytime soon, but great to have the top international stars at a top international show. With the notable history between Saraya and Mercedes Moné, it seems possible that we really could see the former Sasha Banks in AEW now more than ever. What are your thoughts on Mercedes Moné being at AEW All In last night? Now, a new pay-per-view has been announced by Tony Khan as well for October. AEW President Tony Khan announced a new pay-per-view for his promotion, WrestleDream. Khan revealed during the All In post-show media scrum that the event will be taking place on October 1st, and that date is because New Japan Pro Wrestling legend Antonio Inoki died on that date in 2022. Quote, I can announce here for the first time that on October 1st at the Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle, it will be the first ever WrestleDream, announced Khan. WrestleDream is taking place on the 1-year anniversary of the passing of wrestling's greatest dreamer, and I thought it would be very fitting. After All Out, you won't have to wait for Full Gear in November. Khan later noted how he was hopeful of getting New Japan stars for the WrestleDream event. Of course, AEW is known to work with the promotion, including their Forbidden Door joint event. The last one took place on June 23rd, and the New Japan stars that were a part of the event included Hiromu Takahashi, Sanada, Kazuchika Okada, amongst many others as well. Now, speaking of Full Gear, Tony Khan did mention it there. We now have a date and location for the November pay-per-view. Tony Khan announced at the post-All-In press conference that the Full Gear pay-per-view will take place on November 18, 2023. Khan said that the show will be held at the Kia Forum in California, which has previously hosted AEW Dynamite shows. The AEW president also revealed that Full Gear will continue the tradition of being held on a Saturday, which has been the case for the previous 4 editions of the pay-per-view. Last year's Full Gear show was held at the Prudential Center in New Jersey, where MJF defeated Jon Moxley in the main event of the show and began his AEW World Championship reign. Tony Khan and co have a busy couple of months, with 2 pay-per-views set to be held between now and Full Gear in November. On September 3rd, just a week after the record-breaking All In show, AEW will host All Out, which will emanate from the United Center in Chicago, Illinois. On the post-show scrum, he also revealed, as I mentioned, the new pay-per-view WrestleDream, which will be taking place in October 1st as well. And in addition to that, in September, we know that Grand Slam is returning at Arthur Ashe Stadium in Queens, New York, too. Also at the press conference last night, Orange Cassidy's next few opponents for the International Championship were revealed. Orange Cassidy's triumph in the Stadium Stampede match was admittedly the biggest of his AEW career, but the work never stops for the consistent international champion, with a massive week awaiting him in Chicago, Illinois. Cassidy led his team to victory over the Blackpool Combat Club at Sunday's All In pay-per-view event at Wembley Stadium, covering his hands in glass to land an orange punch on Claudio Castagnoli to earn the pinfall and conclude a bloody war. Speaking at the AEW press conference following the event in London, the 39-year-old was quizzed on whether it was the biggest moment of his career and what the match meant for him to him and his best friends, Chuck Taylor and Trent Beretta. Quote, I think it's got to be not only getting the pinfall in the match, but the people that were in the match, Cassidy said. We're talking about Claudio Castagnoli. He's one of the best professional wrestlers of all time. He's incredible. That was definitely one of the highlights of my career. I've been thinking about this match for a while, obviously, because of how personal it is for me, Chuck and Trent. I feel like a nightmare. Everything hurts, but I wouldn't change a thing. Cassidy, however, admitted that not defending his international title didn't sit well with him, demanding a match for the upcoming edition of Dynamite at the Now Arena in the Windy City. AEW President Tony Khan obliged and revealed Cassidy would defend his title against his teammate from All In, Penta El Zero Miedo, in singles competition on August 30. The winner of the match between Cassidy and Penta will not only hold the prestigious championship, but they will then move on to a marquee match at AEW All Out at the United Center on Sunday, September 3rd against none other than Jon Moxley. The former three-time AEW World Champion has been embroiled in a bitter feud with both men, and the current champion believes Moxley is the final name he needs to tick off his list of opponents. Quote, I have pinned Wheeler Yuta twice, and now tonight I've pinned Claudio Castagnoli, Cassidy said. There is one more person that I want to pin. There's one more person I want to beat. Jon Moxley, the winner of this match on Wednesday. So there you go. Indeed, that match is set for All Out. Most likely it's going to be Orange Cassidy versus Jon Moxley. Now, obviously, AEW All In, it's returning to London's Wembley Stadium next year in 2024. But what does that mean for All Out? Of course, it was announced at the end of this year's All In pay-per-view that next year's show will be taking place on August 25, 2024. And during the All In post-show media scrum, AEW CEO Tony Khan revealed that like this year's All Out, next year's will be taking place a week after All In 2. Khan revealed that the show will be taking place a week after All In next year because he, quote, wants to build traditions with both the bank holiday in England and Labor Day in the United States. Quote, I try to build traditions and we have something really special that we did tonight, and that's why this same bank holiday weekend, I want people to know bank holiday weekend, Sunday, Wembley, that's a tradition, said Khan. In America, it's a 3-day weekend, Labor Day weekend. They have the bank holiday in America next weekend. It's a very unique opportunity as a live event. Khan later noted he doesn't want to give up that real estate and believes that he can keep these two events going. He added that he wanted to keep doing All Out in Chicago because of its success. This year's All Out, of course, is this coming Sunday, September 2nd. What are your thoughts on having these two shows 7 days apart next year as well? Speaking of All Out, a match has been made official for the show as well. It was widely reported and rumored, but now it's official. Konosuke Takeshita will battle Kenny Omega at the September All Out pay-per-view. The match was confirmed at yesterday's All In media scrum, where Don Callis and Takeshita were two guests of the panel. Tony Khan made the match official on the spot. Of course, Takeshita pinned Omega in the Trios Tag Team Showdown at All In between the Golden Elite, Takeshita, and Bullet Club Gold. Finally, we saw all three men compete in the Stadium Stampede match, but what's the situation regarding the real-life issues between Santana, Ortiz, and Eddie Kingston? Well, an update has emerged on the real-life issues between AEW, Santana, Ortiz, and Eddie Kingston, obviously ahead of their match that took place yesterday. Before Santana got injured last year, it had been reported that although he, Ortiz, and Eddie Kingston were on the same side in a feud against the Jericho Appreciation Society on television, there had been a legitimate falling out between Santana and Ortiz, with Kingston being on Ortiz's side. Fast forward to now, and Santana and Ortiz have both returned to AEW. They were on the same team at yesterday's Stadium Stampede match. Well, of course, Kingston was on the other team. Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select reported that despite Santana and Ortiz being reunited as part of the same team on television, they actually haven't settled their real-life issues, and things, quote, haven't improved between the two or between Santana and Kingston either. So those issues, they're still ongoing. But there you go, guys. This is latest AEW news for you. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right-hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.